I'll teach you how to seduce any man. The sentence was delivered with a calculated calm, as if Alistair Sterling were offering something trivial, a dance, some social advice, a simple kindness between acquaintances. However, the steady, intense gaze with which he held her after the proposal revealed that he knew the exact impact of his words. Clara Davenport felt her face flush violently, her heart hammering against her ribs like a bird trying to escape a cage. She should refuse. She should get up from that garden bench and walk away without looking back. She should pretend she'd never heard. Such an absurd proposition. But there was something in his eyes, in that deep blue that seemed to see right through all her defenses, that kept her pinned to the spot. And then, against all reason, against all prudence, against everything she had been taught about how a respectable woman should behave, she said yes. The world stopped, time froze, and nothing would ever be the same again. Before we dive into this story, leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us what city you're tuning in from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning, to the moment when a woman considered too proper to spark any interest decided to accept an offer that would change her life forever. Clara Davenport was 27 years old and had spent most of them being considered too proper to spark any real interest. She was beautiful in a quiet way, with a natural elegance that required no effort but also didn't command immediate attention. Her hair was a soft brown with coppery highlights that shimmered when the sunlight touched it, always pinned up in practical styles that favored convenience over vanity. Her eyes were a grayish green, the color of willow leaves on a cloudy day, framed by long lashes and well-defined brows. Her face was oval, with soft cheekbones and a delicate chin, and her lips were shaped as if made for restrained smiles, rarely parting to reveal her teeth in an overt display of joy. Her skin had the tone of antique porcelain, fair and unblemished, and her body was slender, with subtle curves that the modest dresses she wore concealed more than revealed. There was something about Clara that could only be perceived with careful observation. A grace in her movements, an intelligence in her gaze, a depth that went unnoticed by those accustomed to more obvious charms. Observant, intelligent, and reserved, Clara had learned to move along the fringes of the social games that consumed other women her age. While her contemporaries vied for attention at balls, she preferred the quiet corners where she could observe without being observed, learn without participating, exist without exposing herself. She had something precious to lose, the image of a respectable woman she had silently built over the years, protecting herself from impossible expectations and inevitable disappointments. Her mother had died when she was 15, leaving her in the care of a distant father who understood little of daughters or feelings. Clara had learned early on that the only person she could count on was herself, and that lesson had shaped every aspect of her personality. Was it possible to live an entire life on the sidelines? Was it possible to find happiness in the invisibility she had so carefully cultivated? The house where she lived was comfortable, but without ostentation, located on a respectable street in the city. Her father, a successful merchant, had ensured she had a suitable dowry and a refined education, but neither had been enough to attract suitors who saw beyond the surface. The men who courted her wanted obvious beauties, easy laughter, personalities that didn't challenge them. Clara was none of those things, and she had long ago stopped pretending to be. Alistair Sterling was everything she was not. Brilliant, magnetic, impossible to ignore. At 32, he was known for his restrained charm, impeccable social expertise, and an undeniable handsomeness that made women sigh whenever he entered a room. Tall, with the athletic build of someone who rode and fenced regularly, he moved with the unshakable confidence of a man born to command attention. His hair was a deep black, always impeccably styled but for a single rebellious lock that insisted on falling across his forehead, giving him an air of studied nonchalance. His face was angular, with a strong jaw and pronounced cheekbones, and there was a dimple in his chin that appeared when he smiled in that way that melted all resistance. But it was his eyes that truly captured anyone who dared to meet his gaze. A blue so intense it seemed unreal. They held a mixture of sharp intelligence, subtle humor, and something deeper that few were ever permitted to see. Alistair was a master in the art of making anyone feel like the most important person in the room while maintaining absolute emotional distance. He knew the social games like a general knows a battlefield, and he won them just as easily. The encounter that would change everything happened in a garden, during a party Clara had only attended at the insistence of a distant cousin. She had taken refuge on a bench partially hidden by rose bushes, waiting for enough time to pass so she could leave without seeming rude. She wasn't expecting company, and she certainly wasn't expecting the company of the most sought-after man in all of New York. "May I join you?" Alistair asked, his deep voice cutting through the garden's silence. Clara looked up, too surprised to hide it. "Shouldn't you be inside, charming the ladies vying for your attention?" A smile crossed his lips, the one that revealed the dimple and disarmed all defenses. "The ladies vying for my attention are terribly predictable. I prefer the company of someone who isn't trying to impress me." He sat down beside her without waiting for permission, and the silence that followed was strangely comfortable. Clara didn't feel the need to fill the void with small talk, and apparently neither did he. "Do you always hide in gardens during parties?" he eventually asked. "I don't hide," she replied, surprising herself with her honesty. "I just prefer to observe rather than participate." "And what do you observe?" "People pretending to be something they're not to impress other people who are also pretending." Alistair laughed, a deep, genuine sound that surprised her. "That is a devastatingly accurate description of gay society." The conversation flowed with a naturalness Clara hadn't expected. She found herself talking about things she never discussed with anyone: her frustration with social expectations, her feeling of not belonging anywhere, her fear of spending her entire life being invisible. The words tumbled out before she could contain them, as if something about him made her lower defenses she had held up for years. "I've never known how to attract attention without seeming out of place," she confessed at one point, her face flushing as she realized how much she had revealed. The other women seemed to instinctively know how to act, what to say, how to look. "I always feel like a foreigner trying to decipher a language everyone else speaks, but me." Alistair watched her for a long moment, his blue eyes studying her in a way that made her feel completely exposed. And then, with that calculated calm she would come to recognize, he made his proposition. "I'll teach you how to seduce any man." Clara should have refused. Every fiber of her being screamed that this was madness, that respectable women didn't accept such proposals, that she was risking everything she had built. But there was something in the way he looked at her, as if he saw potential where others saw only propriety, that made her hesitate. "Why would you do that?" she asked, her voice firmer than she expected. "Because I'm easily bored, because I enjoy a challenge, and because I suspect you are far more interesting than you allow the world to see." She accepted, not out of vanity, not out of desperation, but out of curiosity. The curiosity to discover who she could be if someone showed her the way. The arrangement was simple, a few discreet lessons on subtle gestures, posture, gaze, presence. Nothing scandalous, nothing that would compromise her reputation. Just social knowledge passed on by someone who had mastered the art like few others. The first lesson took place 3 days later, in an empty drawing room at the home of Alistair's aunt, who was traveling. The official pretext was a technical dance lesson, something perfectly acceptable between acquaintances. The reality was far more complex. Seduction begins with the eyes, Alistair explained, positioning himself in front of her. Not the body, not the words, not the gestures, the eyes. Clara swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. And what exactly am I supposed to do with my eyes? Hold their gaze without challenging them. Most women either look away quickly, appearing submissive, or stare fixedly, appearing aggressive. The secret is in the balance. Look at me. She obeyed, her green eyes meeting his blue ones. She felt her face heat up immediately. Don't look away, he instructed, his voice low but firm. Breathe. Relax your shoulders. Hold my gaze, but soften your expression, as if you're interested in what you see, not intimidated by it. Clara tried. She tried again. On the third attempt, something shifted. She felt a strange confidence build in her chest, a self-awareness she had never experienced before. Better, Alistair murmured, and there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Much better. The first lesson ended with instructions on how to smile without offering oneself, how to take up space without asking permission, how to turn simple gestures into silent declarations of presence. Clara absorbed every word like a sponge thirsting for water, feeling transformed not externally but internally. For the first time in years, she felt aware of herself in a way that wasn't painful. She felt present. The days that followed brought a subtle but noticeable change. Clara began to apply what she had learned in small doses, testing her new knowledge in everyday situations. A sustained glance here, a more confident posture there, a silence filled with meaning instead of nervous words, and people began to notice, not dramatically, but they noticed. Glances that once passed over her now lingered. Conversations that once ignored her now included her. The second lesson deepened their proximity in ways Clara hadn't anticipated. Alistair explained the power of the pause, of the silence between words, of the restrained gesture that suggests more than it shows. Most people talk too much because they're afraid of silence, he said, circling her slowly as she stood motionless in the center of the room. But silence is where the power lies. When you pause before answering, you force the other person to pay attention. When you leave a sentence unfinished, you invite their imagination. He stopped behind her, so close she could feel the warmth of his body through the layers of fabric separating them. Your hands, he murmured, lightly touching her wrists. They're tense. Relax. Clara tried to obey, but his touch sent an electric current through her body that made relaxation impossible. She realized her breathing had changed, that her heart was beating too fast, that something was shifting between them in ways no agreement had provided for. Alistair noticed too. She saw the exact moment something changed in his eyes, when the absolute control he always displayed wavered for a fraction of a second. He stepped away more quickly than necessary, clearing his throat to cover his discomfort. I think that's enough for today, he said, his voice huskier than it should have been. Clara didn't comment, but she stored that moment in her memory as proof that she wasn't the only one affected by what was happening between them. The weeks passed, like leaves carried by an autumn wind, and with them, Clara's transformation became impossible to ignore. At social events, she was no longer the woman who hid in corners. She wasn't yet the center of attention, but there was a presence about her now, a self-awareness that drew curious glances and intrigued comments. You've changed, her cousin remarked during a ball. I can't explain how, but you've changed. Clara smiled in that way Alistair had taught her, the smile that hinted at secrets without revealing any. Perhaps I was always like this. Perhaps people are only now beginning to notice. Across the ballroom, she felt Alistair's gaze on her. When their eyes met through the crowd, He raised his glass slightly in a silent toast. She held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, as he had taught her, before looking away with a minimal smile. What she didn't see was the expression on his face after she looked away. An expression that wasn't pride in the success of his lessons, but something far more complex and far more dangerous. The third lesson took place on an afternoon that began like all the others, but ended completely differently. Alistair intended to teach something seemingly simple, how to refuse attention without losing the other's interest, the delicate art of saying no in ways that sounded like maybe. The secret is to make the other person feel chosen, even when they're being rejected, he explained. A regretful glance, a pause that suggests reluctance, a light touch that contradicts the words. Clara listened intently, absorbing every instruction. When he asked her to practice, she stood before him with a confidence she hadn't possessed weeks earlier. "Try to refuse me," Alistair said. "Imagine I'm asking for a dance, and you need to say no in a way that makes me want to ask again." She held his gaze for longer than she should have. She let her lips curve into a smile that was almost sad, almost regretful. She tilted her head slightly, as if she were genuinely sorry. "Unfortunately, I can't accept this dance," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But perhaps on the next occasion." The air between them grew thick. Clara saw something shift in Alistair's eyes, something she recognized, because she felt the same thing. He didn't look away, he didn't step back. He remained there, trapped by something no lesson had taught, because no lesson could. "You learn far too quickly," he murmured. And it wasn't a compliment, it was a confession. "Maybe I have a good teacher. Or maybe you never needed to learn anything. Maybe you just needed permission to be who you've always been." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken possibilities. Clara felt her heart race, felt her hands tremble, felt every defense she had ever built begin to crumble. Alistair ended the lesson earlier than planned and left without a proper explanation. From that moment on, everything changed. The lessons became less frequent, but infinitely more intense. Alistair began to avoid prolonged encounters, making excuses that Clara knew were lies. When they met at social events, he kept a physical distance, while his eyes followed her wherever she went. Clara noticed the change and understood its meaning. He was trying to regain the control he had lost. He was trying to restore the lines she had crossed without even realizing it, and she decided not to back down. For the first time in her life, Clara didn't feel like the lesser party in a dynamic with a man. His lessons had given her tools, but the real transformation had come from within, from a part of herself that had always existed but had never been allowed to flourish. The story's antagonist became increasingly clear: Alistair's silent pride and the invisible line separating mentor and desirable woman. He had spent his life controlling others' emotions, manipulating situations to his advantage, always staying one step ahead of any inconvenient feeling, but he had never learned to deal with his own emotions when they refused to be controlled. During a particularly crowded ball, Clara was asked to dance by another man. Mr. Robert Miller, a handsome and considerably wealthy widower, had been showing increasingly obvious interest. Clara accepted the invitation, naturally applying everything she had learned. She held Mr. Miller's gaze, smiled in that way that hinted at secrets, and moved with the conscious grace of someone who knows exactly the effect she has. Across the room, Alistair watched, and for the first time, he couldn't hide his annoyance. His fingers tightened around his champagne flute with excessive force. His jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. His eyes followed Clara's every move with an intensity that had nothing to do with teaching. Clara noticed, and she felt a satisfaction that should have shamed her, but didn't. When the dance ended and Mr. Miller escorted her back to the edge of the ballroom, Alistair materialized at her side as if he had been waiting. "I see my lessons are bearing fruit," he commented, his voice controlled but tense. "You are an excellent teacher," she replied, holding his gaze in a way that made her own heart race. "Perhaps too good. Are you sorry you offered to teach me?" "I'm sorry for many things, but not for that." The silence between them was heavy with unsaid words. Clara felt she was on the verge of something important, something that would change everything between them irrevocably. "Are the lessons over?" she asked, her voice steady despite her internal tremor. Alistair looked at her for a long moment. "I no longer know what is a lesson and what is something else. And what would this something else be?" He didn't answer, not with words. But the look he gave her said more than any sentence ever could. Time, that relentless master that waits for no one, continued its course. Clara became increasingly aware that she had no desire to apply her lessons to anyone else. Mr. Miller continued to show interest. Other men began to notice her presence, but none of them mattered. None of them were him. The seventh decisive shift came when Clara, with a courage that surprised even herself, confronted the situation directly. They met in the same garden where it had all begun, under the pretext of discussing a final lesson they both knew would not happen. "I have a question," she said, sitting on the same bench where months before she had heard the proposal that changed her life. "Ask it. Are the lessons over? Or were they never just lessons from the beginning?" The question hung in the air between them, disarming defenses, demanding honesty. Alistair remained silent for so long that Clara began to fear she had crossed a line from which there was no return. "Do you want the truth?" he finally asked. "Always. The truth is, I started this thinking it would be an amusing game, teaching an intelligent woman to use weapons she didn't know she possessed. But at some point, I can't say exactly when, the game stopped being a game. And what did it become?" He looked at her, and for the first time, Clara saw genuine vulnerability in his eyes. Those blue eyes that always seemed to have all the answers were now full of questions. "It became the most real thing I've ever experienced," he confessed, "and that terrifies me in ways I can't explain." Clara felt her heart pound. She felt tears welling in her eyes. She felt everything she had suppressed for months finally demand to be acknowledged. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I've spent my life controlling situations, controlling people, controlling myself, and then you appear with your eyes that see too much, and your silence that says too much, and I completely lose control. And what if I told you I've lost control too? I'd say we're two fools who've gotten ourselves into something bigger than we planned." Clara smiled, that smile he had taught her, but which was now entirely her own. "Then we're two fools. That doesn't seem like such a terrible fate." Alistair moved closer, sitting beside her on the bench. The proximity made the air between them vibrate with possibilities. "I should have kept my distance," he said, his voice low. "I should have stopped after the first lesson when I realized you were different from anything I expected." "Why didn't you?" "Because for the first time in my life, I didn't want to. I couldn't. You showed me that all the control I value so much is worthless when the heart decides to ignore it." When he kissed her, it was as if all the lessons had existed only to lead them to this moment. The kiss was soft at first, a question they both answered at the same time. Then it deepened, carrying months of unresolved tension, of stolen glances, of unspoken desires. His hands found her face with a gentleness that contrasted with his reputation as a cold man. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. The world around them ceased to exist, and all that remained were two people who had found each other against all odds. "I don't want to use your lessons on anyone else," Clara whispered when they finally parted. "And I never want to be your teacher again," he replied. "I want to be so much more than that. The wedding took place 3 months later, causing the delicious scandal that society so enjoyed. The most sought-after bachelor in New York choosing the woman everyone had ignored for years. Rumors ran wild, theories were spun, bets were made and lost. None of it mattered to Clara and Alistair. The ceremony was intimate, held in the gardens of his estate, in the same spot where he had made his absurd proposal, and she, against all reason, had accepted. Clara wore a simple ivory silk dress, wildflowers in her loose hair, the most genuine smile she had ever worn. Alistair waited for her under an arch of white roses, and when he saw her walking toward him, his eyes shone with an emotion few had ever witnessed in him. The years passed like pages in a book, whose ending was more beautiful than anyone had dared to imagine. 2 children came to complete their family, a girl with her mother's green eyes and her father's quiet determination, and a boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's observant kindness. Clara did not lose her identity in marriage. She kept that observant quality that had always defined her, that quiet intelligence that Alistair had been the first to truly recognize. Alistair did not lose his dignity. He kept that restrained charm that characterized him, but now it was directed at one person, the only one who truly mattered. On a summer evening, many years after that first proposal, they found themselves in the same garden, on the same bench, under the same stars. Clara's hair had a few silver strands now, and soft lines marked the corners of Alistair's eyes. But the look they shared was the same as always. "Do you still remember?" she asked, resting her head on his shoulder. "Every detail," he answered. "How you blushed when I made my proposal, how you accepted against all logic, how you completely disarmed me without even realizing what you were doing. I thought you were the one teaching me how to seduce." Alistair laughed, that deep sound she never tired of hearing. "That was my greatest miscalculation. I thought I was teaching when in fact I was being conquered. Any regrets?" "Not for a second." She lifted her face to look at him, and even after so many years, her heart still sped up when she met those blue eyes. "Do you know what I learned from all those lessons?" she asked. "What?" "That the greatest seduction isn't in learning how to attract someone. It's in realizing who, without meaning to, has already been won." Alistair smiled, that smile that revealed the dimple and still made her sigh after all these years. "You were always smarter than me," he murmured before kissing her. And there, in that garden that held the beginning of their story, 2 souls who had found each other through an absurd proposal silently celebrated the life they had built together. A life that proved that true love sometimes begins in the most unlikely of places. Sometimes it begins with a lesson no one asked for and ends with a life they both chose. Dear listeners, we hope this story has touched your heart. If you were moved, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most. Every day, we bring you real stories, full of emotion and humanity. Your voice is part of this universe.